Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for joining on the All Viewpoints. Today, we have a fantastic guest with me, Gary Cohen, and he's going to be talking about transparency, true transparency, and openness in business world, which I find very fantastic because I was chatting with Gary. I said, some organizations that they would say, oh, we're transparent, we're open, and all the good stuff of Agile, but then in real time, they don't actually practice that. So Gary has over 30 years experience in software development industry as a developer. He's been a manager. He's been an executive and a consultant. Talk about it, Gary has been, in the market. Not on the market, but he's been in the industry for some time now. And he has successfully introduced and cultivated Agile thinking and the cultural values of different software and services company, creating high-performing and self-organizing teams. And even organization. And currently, Gary focuses on helping teams and organizations to create better ways of working. And he is the principal consultant and owner of the Practical Agility LLC. What I do like about what Gary is going to be talking about this morning is the product side of things, which we often miss out. So welcome, Gary.
Thanks, Kemi. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. So we talk about how executive, product managers, program managers, and those people we don't often share more light on, can communicate effectively, how they can be more transparent about what are we building, is it viable, and things like that. And this is some of the things that we're going to be talking about. But before we deep dive into all those kind of the good stuff, let's kick off by you telling us your personal journey and what it's been like in the product space.
Okay, yeah, no. So I actually have a technical background, and I I got introduced to Agile in the early 2000s, working at a company called Primavera Systems under Bob Schatz, who had brought in Ken Schwaber to help find a better way of producing software products. And so I learned a lot there. I think maybe my journey is a little bit different. My Agile journey is a little bit different than some other folks because I didn't have that typical career path of Scrum Master, Agile coach. Yeah, we used Agile, like I led software teams, right? Engineering, QA, and then product. And it was just a good way of delivering software, delivering value to our customers. It wasn't like our goal wasn't to be to follow Agile. It was to create good software for our customers. And so everywhere that I went, to different companies, they were different software product companies, but I would bring in this Agile way of working, right? And we'd figure out how to make that work in each environment. But again, like I didn't go to an Agile conference. I didn't, right? Like we had like one or two Agile coaches come in. We actually had we had a few specialized Scrum Masters, but eventually, like, our model was for each team to, amongst the people on the team, to kind of take on some of those responsibilities. So it was a lot different, and this continued up until, let's say, 2021. And I decided that instead of running these organizations and that I would focus my time to help others and help other organizations in a coaching or consulting role. And that's when I started to get into like going to the Agile conferences and learning about all the great things that people were doing there. But it's a lot different. So I think like my perspective sometimes is a little bit different because like I think Agile is great,
Yeah.
but Agile is a means to an end. It's not the
Yes.
end itself. So
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about doing agile without even thinking that you're doing agile within the first organ. Primavera used to be very project management focused, if I remember correctly.
well, that's actually the software. That was their biggest software product was project management software.
Yes.
But yeah, it's ironic that that eventually they turned to Agile. They were one of the first companies to turn to Agile to develop uh, the project management software with the Gantt
Yes.
charts and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when people say, oh, well, agile is a framework or a methodology, or whatever it is, and you're saying to them it's a mindset, they should come and talk to you, right? And say, no, it is actually a way of life. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's being open to change and open to different ways of work. To me, that's what being agile is about. So yes, there are a set of practices, right, that will help you in most cases, um, eh, you know, um, by breaking up work into small chunks, right, and working on iterations and
Mhm.
adapting and generating these feedback loops, like those are important principles and practices. But I think it's also beyond that is like how much do we admit, and this gets to the transparency topic,
Yeah.
is like how much do we admit how much we don't know, right? Or how much is going to change. And I think like when I think of, you know, like creating products, right? Over 80% of the features that a product company puts into their product, right, is rarely or never used
Oh,
by
yeah.
their customers. And so clearly we don't know as much as we think we know about what our customers want. We all know on the technical side, right, we know that there are a lot of things we don't know about how we're going to implement something,
Hmm.
right, or how
Yes.
long something's going to take, right? And yet with all that uncertainty, our culture or our ways of working are such that we put together schedules that have a single fixed date on them, like, hey, this is
Absolutely.
right? Roadmaps, right? And we put together plans. And then we go into these program status meetings with executives. And what do we talk about? We talk about, are you going to deliver on that date? And right. So I think we don't go in with a healthy recognition of all the stuff that we don't know that we need to learn. And therefore we focus too much on delivery, which is important,
Yeah.
but not enough on learning and adapting, right? And creating that feedback so we can adapt.
Yeah. And that's is I've worked in at least a few organizations now, and you've just described the typical situation that happens, right? The business and the technology guys are never on the same page when it comes to what are we building, how we're going to build it, because some people have some idea or ideas of how and when things should run, and the people executing the work, which are the delivery guys, have different expectations, right? So how do you marry those two expectations? And you talked about true transparency, and I kind of like underline the true part of that. And I'm just wondering, what does that mean to you or to the organizations that you work, and what does it look like in real life?
So I think there's two types of transparency, right? There's kind of the first level of transparency, which is anybody can see what we're working on now and what what's on tap
Mm,
for afterwards, right? So we have product backlogs, we have sprint backlogs, right? We have the team boards, things like that, and there are a lot of places where where only limited people can see that, right?
yes.
And so like to me, that's the first level you have to get to is to understand. like if you want to build trust between the different roles and different teams and with executives, right? Is here's what we're doing. This is based on what we know now. This is what we're working on, and
Mhm.
this is what we think we're going to be working on next. And during the sprint, you can see, hey, this is the status of all of our work items moving across the board. And that does two things. So one, it builds trust because hey, I got nothing to hide, right? Um, and number two, because it's out there, like in where people can see it, right? There's less chance of there being miscommunication or that thing where you said where products thinking we're doing one thing and the delivery folks
Mhm.
are working on something else, right? You don't have that. And then third is, we the limited time that we get to spend with executives is usually in these program status meetings
Mm.
where and maybe we'll talk some more about that later on, but in general, what do we spend our time there on? Unfortunately, we spend a lot of time just sharing the status, like all the stuff that people could just go see on their own, kind of self-service,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Right. And so beyond building the trust, the other benefit is that when you get to those meetings now, if you still need to have them, right, because you don't need to talk about status, you can talk about important decisions, learnings, things like that.
Mm.
Like what are we going to do next, as opposed to just, hey, we're green, whatever.
Yeah. Typical, what is it someone called it? Watermelon.
Watermelon projects. Yep, they're green on the outside, red on the
Yes.
inside. Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting. Because earlier on you were talking about building things that our customers don't even use. I have a phone. I only kind of like I use it to make calls and receive them and text messages. Obviously, I have a WhatsApp on it. But other than that, I don't even half of more than half of the apps on my phone I don't even go to on a regular basis. So how can we be more open? And that's another word that you kind of like brought to the table. How can we be more open about the things that we build and talk to executives, right?
So, yeah,
About
yeah,
that.
no, that's a good question. So, one of the things that I've seen, I don't know if you're familiar with Teresa Torres. She's got a book, Continuous Discovery Habits,
Uh,
which focuses more on the product discovery side.
mm,
And it's an excellent book. But one of the things that she puts forward there is something called opportunity solution trees.
oh, I've
And
heard of that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Mm.
And so the idea is you start with the business outcome you want, right? That's at the top of the tree. And then you start to think of the problems or opportunities that customers or people in the marketplace have, or that you think they have,
Mhm.
that might present an opportunity for you to provide value to them, right? And achieve your business outcome. And so you can come up with many of these, right? That's why it's a tree. It's got many
Yes.
different branches, and you can break down big opportunities into smaller ones that you could actually like do as part of an iteration or several iterations of work. Um, but that's all in the problem space. So that's all focused on what are the problems that our customers have, or the needs, wants, right? Things like that. And I think it's important. We don't spend enough time in the problem space. We do at the beginning of a like
Yes.
a product
What is it
yeah.
they call it? Ocean thinking or blue sky thinking?
Um, I'm not sure,
Oh, okay.
but
It's kind of like, oh, let's just do the big kind of like a planning sort of thing.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. So like, I mean, I'm trying to, like rather than do all that planning up front,
Mm.
right? It's let's keep the problem space there. Let's think of potentially different things we could do. And then this is where it gets really interesting, is then you start to think about potential solutions to each of those opportunities. So now you're starting to go into the solution space as well. So you have the problem space and solution space,
Yeah.
but it's all on one page, right? All on
Yeah.
one diagram. And then for each solution, you start to think about what are the key assumptions that we're making that would have to be true for that solution to be a viable,
Yeah.
so a great solution. And so the trick is to try and quickly validate or invalidate your most critical, the ones you're less sure about, and the ones that are more critical to your success, right? So so there you're kind of killing. You want to quickly kill ideas that aren't going to get you to your target.
Yes.
But but beyond that is now you have this tree that is sort of telling, like, you can have a conversation with executives now, right? And say, this is the problem that we're focused on, right? Or, and here are the opportunities that we see to solve it. We think this one is probably, the one we want to start working on right
Yeah.
now, but here are other ones that potentially could get us there. And here are the key things we need to learn. Like, here are the questions, but here's what we need to learn, right? And maybe we can deliver value along the way. But so now you have this more honest roadmap is what I would call it,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
Right, where here's where we're focusing our time. These are the problems we're focused on. These are the potential solutions, and these are the key things we need to know. These are the next steps that we're taking to see if we're going to continue on this path or find
Yeah.
another path.
Yeah. What I like about what you just described, and correct me if I'm wrong, the opportunity tree is just like a one pager where you have everything information that you need. So you're going to the executive and saying no to certain things, but you're backing it up with facts.
Right, and you're talking about things that they really care about,
Mm.
and you're also, I think, you're now focused on the right questions. So, like, when you're just focused on, are we green, yellow, red, right? There's not, number one, there's not a specific thing that we can talk about other than schedule and delivery risk. Are we on target? Are we not? Right?
Yes.
That doesn't really, it's almost like, you're going in front of your parents and hoping you don't get yelled at or whatever, right, for being late, or, whereas if you have something like the opportunity solution tree in front of you, all of a sudden there's some interesting questions. So what do we, are these the right assumptions? What did we find out? Like, you can show that, hey, we thought that this was a key assumption, and we just found out that this was validated, like it is a good assumption. And so now we're going to continue on, and we're going to go work on delivering this part of the solution, right? Those to me are much more meaningful conversations.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I used to work with an organization some years ago, and the product managers, no, sorry, they did have product managers and they have the product owners as well. I mean,
mhm,
product ownership is a subset of product management, isn't it?
mhm,
However, you have to empower your product owners to be able to do certain things within some boundaries and also provide some guidance because they're delivery facing, right? Um, but this organization wasn't the case. The executives, the management are always driving whatever the product owner needs to do. Um, and it was just a culture of, no, we tell the product owners what to do. From your own experience, how would you suggest a product owner handle that kind of a situation? And we're talking about being open and being transparent about the situation on ground, because they want the delivery team to go, just deliver. We have to meet some
yeah.
timelines here, but it's just not working. How do you balance that?
Yeah. So, like, first of all, I wouldn't, I mean, I guess it depends on the size of your organization, but I don't really like the model where the product owner and the product management is separated. Because, right, again, it's a silo, right? And it
Mm,
becomes more of a handoff. I've decided as product manager, I've decided here's the direction that we're going, and now you, the product owner, go work
hmm
with the Scrum team to get it done, right? So that becomes a handoff, and we all know that handoffs can cause all sorts of problems, including, um, I mean, first of all, it's slower, right? And then as a product owner, like, how do you, like, I think it's bad enough a lot of times when the delivery teams are separated from the customer, the thinking behind, the product discovery things where we talk to customers, think about their problems, personas, things like that.
hmm
Um, so like I would actually advocate them being involved in some manner in some of those discussions, but a product owner, like, how do they represent the product if they're just taking orders like that?
Yep, that's just what happened. Did ask some questions with the product owner. I said, "You could do A, B, C, D," and they went, "No, they can't. They have to wait for directions."
Yeah, and I mean, it seems to me, and I'm going to show my age here now, but um, back in the old days, we used to have a position called business analyst.
Yes.
Right, right. And the business analyst wasn't a product manager, right? And it wasn't quite like engineering QA, whatever, right? But like if you looked at it organizationally, I think like it was 50-50 about whether it sat in the product management group or whether it sat
Yes.
in the engineering development group.
Mhm.
Um, and that's exactly what it was, is they were responsible for taking something that somebody else created in product management and writing stories, requirements, whatever for the team, and just trying to make sure that those things got implemented. And I think a better model is when everybody is aligned. So it's not just engineering's job to deliver, right? Or the like everybody should be aligned in terms of incentives, right? And the goal is not to necessarily produce exactly these 13 features or whatever, right? It should be to create something that's going to provide value to the customers, right? And that is going to support the businesses, the business outcomes that they
Yeah.
need out of it, that's profitable or whatever, customer retention, whatever thing is meaningful there. And I think we want to stimulate a collective sense of ownership, not
Yeah.
individual senses of ownership.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't love that model. But I think if we're talking about if you're in that position or whatever, or just, like how do we be transparent on the the delivery side,
hmm
right, of things, right? Then, I mean, it really comes down to a couple things, right? We have roadmaps and we have plans, right? I mean, there are a few other things, and we have our product backlog, but essentially, I think it's how we frame those things. So, do we look at them as things that are written in stone, right?
Mm.
That cannot be changed, and then this is just what we're doing, and we're going to report on the progress. Hey, there's 10 things on this on our roadmap, and we're done 3, and now we're working on number 4, and like, and I've been in places where that works fine, but it's it's a little bit limiting because we very well might be working on the wrong things.
Yes.
Right. And so that's number one. And number two, the other thing you see in plans and roadmaps usually, like, well, let me ask a question. So on roadmap, when's the last time you've seen like a blank space on a roadmap? Like, hey,
Mm.
right? It's usually, okay, we're gonna work on feature 1 here for this thing, right? And then feature 2, right?
Yes.
So So what happens if we find out that, you know what, people really like feature one and they would like more of it, right? And so we're going to have to spend more time, developing more of feature one, right? We don't have any room on our
No, we
roadmap for
don't.
our
We
plan,
don't have room, Gary. We
right?
just want to build what we said we are going to build. We don't. We say we go back and inspect
Yeah,
and adapt, but
right. Exactly, right. So that's always bothered me. And then look, I've reported directly to CEOs before, and even ones that are pretty knowledgeable of Agile, maybe pretty strong word, but like they have familiarity with Agile and they get the basic concepts. If when the plan changes, it raises their antenna up, right? And it's like, well,
yes,
what went wrong? What slipped? What, which is fine. Like it's their right to ask those questions. But I think it's our fault because if we present it as this is what we're going to deliver, right? They view it as a concrete plan. Whereas if we were being really transparent,
yes,
right? There's a lot we don't know, including some really important things like, is this the most important thing for us to be building right now? Right? And how much of it do we need to
yeah,
build? Right? Could we do 20% of it, get 80% of the value, and then move on to something else? Right?
yeah,
And really at the end of the day, I don't know, it's sort of like I don't know who's trained who about this, but right, we set the goal as delivering this set of functionality on this exact date when we all know, right? We have no, right? We have a cone of uncertainty, right? That's another place
absolutely, yeah,
where we're not
yeah.
transparent. But oh, but the CTO or whoever it is, wants a single date when it's going to be done, and so we lie, right? I mean, I'm not saying like we
I know
lie,
what you
but
mean.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. You pad things up, and I think the question is, why are we not transparent and open enough? And I think you touched on one, which is when things change, the executive are like, what? What happened? Right? So the obviously the delivery team, the managers, the product, everyone kind of like sugarcoats. But what
Mhm.
are the other things that could be hindering transparency and openness? And it's one of, those values of Agile and Scrum that we are supposed to uphold.
Yeah. So, um, I mean, I think the biggest thing, which you'll I'm sure agree with me on, is psychological safety, right?
Mm,
If and usually I don't put things on the leaders, but leaders do have a lot of influence. And if you go to a leader and give them some news about something that's changing, and then they kind of lose their temper or start, yelling or right, guess what? The next time that something like that,
yes.
you're not going to tell them, right?
Mm,
And I know I've been a leader. I know it's tough, like when you get surprised or things like that. But psychological safety is probably the most important thing that leadership can do, like in an organization. And that includes the top leaders. It includes the frontline managers. It
mhm.
includes, and it also, I mean, includes our peers, like on the teams. Like if if we don't feel safe voicing our opinions and sharing our ideas, right, then none of this agile stuff is really going to work, right? Because it does require courage, right,
Yes,
and
it does.
openness, and right, and things like that. And so that's that's one of the things when I coach leaders is like, how can we create something where people feel comfortable participating, sharing their opinions, bringing bringing up important news, right, and
Yeah.
information.
No,
And
no matter how stupid we think it might be, right?
sure, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, exactly. And because I mean, I know people like during brainstorming we say, "Hey, there's no stupid ideas," but
Mm,
that that's really like there is so much we don't know, right, about what's going to work, or that what's going to, what's going to spark an idea in somebody else,
Yeah.
right? That like there are definitely parts of the process where we want as many divergent ideas as possible, right? I mean, that's like kind of one of the
Mhm.
keys to facilitation and things like that, is first we diverge and we try and get as many ideas as possible, and right, and then once we kind of get all those ideas on the table, then we want to kind of converge, right,
Yes.
as a team together, right, as a group, as to what we think is the best way forward. And in order to really get everybody's participation and to get as many perspectives as possible, you need that strong psychological safety. Um, so
Yeah.
without that, you're not going to
Mm.
be building much on top of that. So
Wow. And some people might say that's another buzzword within the organization, psychological safety. How do we create that? And what does it even look like? Because some people will say, well, I just have to say my piece. Some people would use that as an avenue to be rude or to be, all sort of unkindly to people around them. And they would use that as a basis of, well, it's a psychological safety and I want to speak. How do you balance that kind of like environment where everybody is still able to speak, but be kind about it?
well, I think that's another agile value, right? Respect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's important. I think letting people talk about the system, right, um, as opposed to blame the system, not the people, right? When you start pointing fingers, that's not a healthy environment, right?
No.
And
Mm.
right. So um, I think um, I think like number one, just helping people get in the habit of talking about the outcomes they didn't like or the challenges in the system, not that, hey, Gary, didn't do a good job here, right? And that, right.
Yes.
Um, and so that's one part of it. I think also just having the right um, forums for people to voice their opinions, and it might be different in every environment, right? But I mean, clearly we have like retros, for
Yeah.
example, at least on the team level and maybe other levels. Maybe we have open spaces. Um, Certainly when we're doing certain kinds of brainstorming, right, we want to facilitate in a way that um, helps get more people involved, right? I mean, you have the liberating structures and things like
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
are
Mm-hmm.
good with that. Um, so it's finding those areas where people can voice their opinions um, in a way that's not going to get in the way of, hey guys, we have these 5 items on our sprint board, right? And we have a week
Mm.
left in the sprint, and let's focus on getting that, so there's certain times where, you know, where we discuss, right? Or we reflect, right?
Yeah.
And then there's other times where it's, okay, we made this decision, hopefully as a group, right? But we made this decision, like, so when we go through sprint planning or whatever, this is what we're focused on for the next 2 weeks or whatever, length of sprint you have. And let's focus together as a team. Let's, right, like we all signed off on this as a team, so let's not,
Mm-hmm.
now's not the time to, I mean, we can debate like how to get certain things done, but we're not going to debate that these are the things that we're focused on and working on, during this sprint.
Yeah.
So
Mm. Yeah, I think what I'm taking away from what you've just said, which I think is important, is to create space or create places for people to do different kinds of things. For instance, create a space for people to just moan, For instance, as an example, all right, this is a space for you to just say whatever you want, get it off your chest. And this is another time that we're going to just focus on what we need to build. So that way, when you're talking about what you need to build, people are not complaining about how they're feeling. Oh, well, they can bring their feelings in, but it wouldn't derail the planning. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And yeah, sometimes people do need to vent.
Yeah,
And
yes, they need to vent. And taking as an executive or even manager, you're taking yourself out of the equation so that they can speak, right?
that's a great point. One of the things that, like, let's take retrospectives as an example, right? When I was a leader, in my organization, I would never ever go to a retro. Like
Mhm.
that was the space for the team or the group of teams or whatever. The only time I ever, in all my years there, that I came into a retro is because the team invited me because they had something
Yeah,
specific that they wanted to talk to me about. And like I think that that's really important. And look, I've seen in different places, I've seen what I would call benevolent
mhm.
managers. Hopefully I was one, but like I've seen like in other places like benevolent managers who have good relationships with the folks on the team and their downline. But they come to these meetings and like it's always a hard conversation that I have to have with them is like,
Mm.
this is nothing personal, but like you might want to consider how the meeting would go differently if you
Yeah,
weren't there, right? Because we all know when somebody who has some authority or power or whatever walks into a
absolutely.
room,
Yep,
the room changes, right?
absolutely. I mean, what I tend to do is to call it out. I used to work with a person that would come into meetings, and when they speak, everybody's quiet. And I had to say to them, "You come in with a rank and authority, right? Even though they're wearing projecting that in the meetings, but the moment they voice out, everybody would just go, oh yeah, let's go with that."
Yep.
So they said, oh yes, maybe I should be saying beforehand or say afterwards that, hey, this is not gospel. I'm just putting my ideas on the table just like everybody else. But yes,
It,
you're
it
right.
and it's not, but so like refinement sessions, that's
Mm.
another area where you see people, a powerful or a highly esteemed person speaks
Mhm.
in the meeting. Oh, I think that's a two or whatever.
Yeah,
If you're doing planning poker or I think this is the way we should do it. And all of a sudden the rest of the room is either quiet or just
that's
says,
it.
yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we're done. And it's too early to converge on a solution. And we didn't hear from 80% of the people in the room. So that's that's where like, as a coach or similar, that's right. What we try and do is try and make sure that we create space for others,
yeah.
right? And teach others how to create space for others.
I think that's important. That is very important. I know your journey is different because you're coming from a software developer into the the product management space, and people might think, yeah, he knows the in and out of the software, so it makes sense for you to become a product manager or a product coach. But if someone wants to get into product management, they love to build, what would be, for lack of a better word, a typical stage or stages for them to go through?
That's a good question. Um, I, I mean, certainly there's a set of information that you need to know, so number one, you need to enjoy talking with customers, right? I mean, so I think that's a prerequisite. So any position that can give you experience talking with customers and understanding how to observe right? Because with customers, sometimes it's not just what they say, but what they actually do. Um, so getting exposure to customers and talking to customers, I think that's really important. There's a whole bunch of analytical and business side stuff that you need to know. And whether you get that through your education or just be, being in certain parts of the business, or looking at like how does the company make money, what are competitors
Mm,
doing, right? What are the problems that people those are the sort of things that I think really good product people think about, and they fall in love with problems, not always the
yeah.
solutions. And so I know you were probably asking me like, okay, so first spend some time being in this position and then that position, like a career path. And
Perhaps, yeah.
and that I'm not I'm not sure that I'm the best expert to recommend to people what like I focus more on here are the skill sets that you need to pick up
Hmm.
rather than but I would say like clearly if if they do have business analyst positions in the company that you work for, that's sort of that can be a training ground for, because it gives you knowledge about, how to think about user stories, or how we think about features, and how we build stuff on top of, like first we want to, you know first we want to deliver this part of the feature, and then we can sort of add on to it, right? Those sorts of skill sets.
Yeah.
That's probably, I mean, that's probably the most traditional is business analyst, product owner, and then, product manager, and
Yep.
then maybe eventually chief product officer or whatever. I would
Hmm.
say I mean, like Melissa Perry talks a lot about the whole, product management career paths, and um, also a lot of strong ideas about all the things a good product manager would
Yeah.
do. So I know she has the book Escaping the Build Trap, and
Oh
which I've
yeah.
read.
Yes,
Yeah,
I have the book.
yeah,
And talking about books, I see you have lots of books in your shelf. Which one? And you have a sprint on your desk as well. But
yeah.
which one would you recommend for people to pick up?
So I actually thought about this, and so I've already talked about one, which is the Teresa Torres book, right? The Continuous Discovery Habits. But I would recommend four other ones, and they're vastly different. So
Mhm.
maybe that's good. But so Bob Galen, his Extraordinary Badass Agile Coaching book. If
Oh yeah,
you're
I read that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I think it pushes us to become better at our craft,
Mm.
and also is very well-rounded. Doesn't just focus in on professional coaching. It focuses on the whole coaching wheel. So that's a great one. Um, Another one, Rich Sheridan, who's the CEO of Menlo Innovations in Ann Arbor. He wrote two books, Joy Inc. and Chief Joy Officer, and take your pick as to which one you want to read. But
Mhm.
if you're looking at how do you motivate people and how do you make your intentions about how you want your organization or team to work, um, I have not seen a better place than Menlo in terms of intentionally designing their organization to reflect their values and the way that they want to work day in and day out. It's I mean, so they're a small I mean, like 50, 60 people consultancy, software consultancy, but but I just love the way that they've very intentional about how they um, design things. And like some of the things they do would not be for every organization or even
Mhm.
most organizations, but learn about how they think about things. So that's a really good one.
Okay.
Uh,
So you
um,
recommended to either of the Rich Sheridan's book, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
And you can read both too. I've read both, but I think if you read one, you'll get, 70% of, you know, what you would get by reading two. So
Okay.
um,
All right.
and then if you're into organizational transformations, then Jardina London has a great book called Cultivating Transformations. And Jardina's, it really focuses on like how do we create change over time,
Mm,
and one of the things she talks about is how to speak up at the right times and when organizations are ready for change.
that's
So
important.
and then finally, this is the newest book. Martin Damin, his newest book, or maybe it's his only book, but Driving Value with Sprint Goals, Humble Plans, Exceptional Results. You note the
Yeah, I've
word
seen that.
yeah, it's a wonderful book. Um, and note he talks about humble plans. That's being very transparent, right? The humble recognition of what we know, what we don't know. And
Yes,
he's showing how with sprint goals, how we can create like the intent. This is the problem we're trying to solve. This is the value we're trying to provide without the false, certainty of we're going to create exactly these, 5 features or user stories or whatever, in the sprint. That it's more about are we solving, are we making progress on the product goals through the sprint goals,
yes,
right? And he's got a much bigger product background than I do, and so I always find it very refreshing when I see somebody with his background um, creating a great example of how everybody can work together cross-functionally.
yeah.
Uh, so,
And talking about cross-functionally, I think a lot of silos are begin to happen within organizations later. But that is a topic for a different time. You are the owner and consultant of Practical Agility. What can people reach out to you for?
yeah, so basically, we're available to help out with any organizational design, any sort of product, how do we modernize our product approach to take into account things like continuous discovery, um, doing agile release management, things like that.
Mm.
And then also just working with agile teams, to help co-create the right agile processes and lean processes to improve flow, to cut down cycle time. Those are generally the things that people are looking for, and that's what we try and help them out
Yeah.
with.
And I must say that, I mean, from my experience, and I could be wrong, that we don't typically focus on those kind of things when it comes to the product. It is more of solution based rather than let's start with the problem and try to solve and then go towards building. Um, so, do you just work with organizations, or can an individual reach out to you and say, "Hey, come and help me, so I can help my team as well"?
Yeah, no, I'm willing to work with individuals, with companies. Um, yeah, no, I definitely have done both, and very willing to do both. I mean, the thing that's most meaningful to me is when I see, people learning how to create a better work environment for themselves and their teammates,
Yeah,
and achieving better results. So I definitely enjoy working with both.
yeah. Thank you so much, Gary. It's been wonderful talking to you about all kinds of things. We started with transparency, openness, and going into psychological safety, working with products and products management and executives has just been an interesting conversation. Like I said earlier, you never know where this conversation is going to take us. So, and I believe that people who are listening have taken one or two things away and will reach out to you if they have more questions. So, thank you.
Great. Thanks. I enjoyed talking with you, Kemi.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
All right. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep, you too.
All right. Then. Thanks. Bye.
Hey.